The Willard Intercontinental Hotel stood like a crown jewel in the heart of Washington, D.C., its grand lobby a cathedral of power and privilege. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors, and the walls whispered tales of history, of presidents plotting, diplomats scheming, and deals sealed over bourbon and cigars. Tonight, it was alive with the buzz of a political gala, a high-stakes dance of egos and agendas. The air thrummed with the clink of glasses, the rustle of expensive fabric, and the faint hum of a string quartet tucked in a corner, their notes weaving through the chatter like threads of silk. Karoline Leavitt navigated the crowd with the precision of a seasoned warrior. At 27, she was the youngest White House press secretary in history, a fact that made her a lightning rod for praise and criticism alike. Her black dress hugged her frame, elegant but understated, a perfect match for her reputation. Sharp, unflinching, and fiercely loyal to the conservative cause she served. Her hazel eyes scanned the room, catching every glance, every whisper. She was a fixture in DC's political machine, a voice that could cut through noise like a blade. But beneath that steely exterior, there was a secret, a piece of her past she'd locked away, a love for music that once burned brighter than anything else. She paused near a towering marble pillar, a glass of untouched champagne in her hand, and let her gaze drift over the sea of faces. Senators, lobbyists, journalists, all here to play their parts in the endless game of influence. Something felt off, though. The night was too smooth, too polished. Her gut, honed by years of dodging political traps, told her the calm wouldn't last. She was right. The massive double doors at the lobby's far end burst open with a dramatic thud, silencing the room for a heartbeat. Heads turned, conversations stalled, and Karoline's breath caught as a figure strode in like he owned the place. James Carter was unmistakable. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair swept back and a smirk that could stop traffic. A freelance musician with a piano virtuosity that had earned him fame and a mouth that had earned him enemies. He was a darling of the liberal crowd. His outspoken disdain for Karoline's political camp was no secret. He'd taken shots at her on Twitter, in interviews, anywhere he could get a mic tonight. His presence was a Molotov cocktail lobbed into the gala's genteel facade. Their eyes locked across the room, a fleeting clash of wills. Karoline's pulse quickened. This wasn't a random entrance, it was a move, calculated and bold. James didn't hesitate. Ignoring the whispers rippling through the crowd, he cut a path straight to the grand piano in the corner. A sleek, ebony masterpiece that gleamed under the chandelier's light. The string quartet faltered, their bows hovering as he approached. He slid onto the bench with a casual arrogance, his fingers brushing the keys like an old friend. But he didn't play, not yet. Instead, he turned his head, pinning Karoline with that infuriating smirk. The crowd shifted, sensing blood in the water. James's voice sliced through the silence, loud and mocking. "Karoline Leavitt," he drawled, letting her name hang in the air like a challenge. "The press secretary who spins words like gold. Tell me, can you play a tune as well as you play the press? Or do you just pound keys for your boss?" Laughter erupted from a knot of liberal journalists near the bar, their phones already up, cameras rolling. The jab landed hard, a dagger wrapped in velvet. Karoline felt the heat of every stare in the room, her allies' nervous glances, her rivals' smirks. This wasn't just banter. It was a public dare, a test of her mettle that went beyond politics. It struck at something deeper, something personal. Beside her, her aide Mark edged closer, his voice a frantic hiss. "Don't engage, Karoline. He's baiting you. If you flop, the headlines will crucify us." She barely registered his words. Her hands clenched at her sides, nails digging into her palms. James's taunt echoed in her mind, stirring memories she'd buried long ago. She was 16 again, sitting at the old upright piano in her grandmother's house in New Hampshire. The keys were chipped and yellowed, the sound slightly off, but it was her sanctuary. Hours melted away as she played. Chopin's nocturnes, Beethoven's sonatas, losing herself in a world where notes mattered more than words. Back then, music had been her dream, her soul laid bare. Politics came later, a duty she'd embraced when the world demanded it. She'd locked that other Karoline away, traded ivory keys for podiums and press briefings. Karoline straightened, her chin lifting as she met James's gaze across the lobby. The room seemed to shrink, the crowd fading into a blur. Her heart pounded, but her voice, when it came, was steady, low and resolute. "Let's see who can really play," she said. A collective gasp rippled through the gala. She stepped forward, her heels clicking on the marble floor, each stride a declaration of intent. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, forming a corridor to the piano. James's smirk twitched, a flicker of unease breaking through his bravado, but he recovered fast. He slid off the bench, gesturing to it with a mock bow. "Ladies first," he said, his tone still dripping with scorn. Karoline reached the piano, her fingers brushing the cool, polished keys. For a moment, doubt crashed over her like a wave. Her hands trembled slightly, the weight of the moment pressing down. She hadn't played in public since college, hadn't touched a piano in years beyond a few stolen moments alone. What if she'd lost it? What if she stumbled, handing James the victory on a silver platter? Then she closed her eyes, and New Hampshire came rushing back. The smell of pine drifting through the open window, the creak of the floorboards underfoot, the way the music had lifted her above everything. Schoolyard taunts, her parents' expectations, the chaos of a world she couldn't control. She wasn't just a press secretary. She was a pianist, an artist who'd once poured her heart into every note. And tonight she'd prove it to James, to the room, to herself. James leaned against the piano, his confidence unshaken. He tapped out a quick, showy riff, a cascade of notes that danced through the air, sharp and intimidating. "Your move," he said, stepping back with a grin that dared her to fail. Karoline sat, her posture rigid but graceful, her hands hovering over the keys. The room held its breath, 100 pairs of eyes locked on her. She exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from her shoulders, and then she began. The first notes of Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue spilled out, soft, tentative, like a whisper of the girl she used to be. The melody floated through the lobby, delicate and searching, drawing the crowd in despite themselves. Then, as the piece built, her fingers found their rhythm. The music swelled, bold and unapologetic, a fusion of jazz and classical that echoed her own duality, tradition and rebellion, restraint and fire. Her eyes stayed closed, her body swaying slightly with the tempo. Each chord was a story. The child who'd practiced until her fingers bled, the teenager who'd dreamed of concert halls, the woman who'd buried that dream under duty. The piano sang under her touch, its voice rich and commanding, filling the vast space with a power that silenced even the most jaded onlookers. The journalists stopped scribbling, their pens frozen mid-sentence. The politicians forgot their posturing, their drinks untouched. Mark, wide-eyed beside her, seemed to hold his breath. James stood rooted to the spot, his arms crossed, his jaw tightening as the music grew louder, more defiant. Karoline didn't see him. She didn't need to. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about her. The piece hit its climax, a torrent of sound, wild and free, echoing off the lobby's walls. Her hands flew across the keys, precise yet passionate, every note a rebellion against the box she'd been forced into. The chandeliers seemed to tremble with the resonance, the air thick with emotion. And then, as the final chords rang out, she let them linger, the sound hanging in the air like a victory cry. Silence followed, thick and electric. Karoline opened her eyes, blinking as if waking from a trance. She stood slowly, her chest heaving, and turned to face the room. Then the dam broke. Applause thundered through the lobby, a wave of sound that shook the walls. Shouts of bravo and incredible rose from the crowd, hands clapping furiously. Karoline stood there, caught in the storm, her breath ragged but her spine straight. James clapped too, though his smile was tight, his eyes narrowed. "Not bad," he said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "For a press secretary, anyway." Don't let the music distract you from the real game. She met his gaze, her own smile cool and unwavering. I don't need to, she replied. It already spoke for me. The gala didn't end there. But for Karoline, the night had shifted irrevocably. As she stepped away from the piano, people swarmed her. Congratulations tumbling from allies, questions peppering her from the press, awed whispers trailing in her wake. Her team, initially stunned, rallied around her, Mark grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Karoline, that was insane, he said, shaking his head. I thought you were toast and then bam, you owned it. She managed a small smile, still reeling. I didn't plan it, Mark. It just happened. By morning, the story had legs, long viral ones. Twitter exploded with hashtag Karoline Levitt and hashtag Keys of Courage. Clips of her performance racking up millions of views in hours. Headlines screamed across every outlet. Press secretary stuns gala with piano mastery. Karoline Levitt's hidden talent shocks DC. From podium to piano, a conservative's triumph. Even her critics couldn't ignore it. Some called it a PR masterstroke, others a revelation of character. The video was everywhere. Karoline in her black dress, poised at the grand piano, her hands a blur of motion as the music poured out. The crowd's shift from laughter to awe was palpable, a visual that begged to be shared. Memes popped up, James's smirk fading, captioned, "When you mess with the wrong press secretary." Pundits debated it on cable news, spinning it into everything from a feminist win to a conservative flex. Later that night, Karoline slipped away from the chaos, finding a quiet corner of the hotel by a floor-to-ceiling window. The lights of DC twinkled below, a constellation of power and possibility. She pressed a hand to the glass, replaying the night in her mind. Not just the performance, but the feeling of reclaiming something she'd thought lost forever. Tonight, she whispered to her reflection, I proved passion beats prejudice every time. Days turned into weeks, and the story of Karoline Levitt and James Carter became a legend in DC circles. A clash of wills that transcended the red-blue divide. It wasn't about politics in the end, but about courage, about standing up and showing the world who you are when the stakes are highest. For Karoline, it was a turning point. She didn't abandon her role. Press briefings still demanded her steal, but she started playing again quietly in stolen moments. The piano in her apartment, long a silent relic, came alive once more. James, for his part, never quite lived it down. He kept performing, kept mouthing off, but the edge of his arrogance was dulled. He'd underestimated her, and the world knew it. And you, what about you? What's your hidden symphony? The piece of yourself you've buried under duty or fear. Maybe it's not a piano, but a paintbrush, a pen, a dream you've let gather dust. Karoline stepped up to her keys and played her truth loud enough for the world to hear. What's stopping you from doing the same? Because in the end, it's not the critics who define us. It's the music we dare to make.